Does Zak Snyder have what it takes to usher in a new era of Superman films? Find out today on Variant Edition.
Hey everybody, welcome to Variant Edition. It has been quite a while, actually.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about Man of Steel. I'm here with Adam Lugaville from Comic Swap. So quickly before we get into this, we'll explain why it's been so long since the last episode. Last summer, I took a job with GameTrailers.com, and so I was writing video game news and features for them. So that took up basically all of my creative time. So that contract has expired now, so we can do more Variant Edition. So we're just going to get right back into it. With
so Denny's loss is our game.
Yeah, exactly.
You're welcome, Internet.
You're welcome, and I'm poor. So, Variant Edition. All right, Man of Steel. So we're in movies today. I already know how you feel about Man. I don't think we've talked about Superman on this show, actually. We did a review of a Batman graphic novel.
We talked about Superman a little bit during the Batman discussion.
Right. So, quickly before we get into things, I'll say that I'm a Superman fan. It's not like my favorite DC book, but I read it for a long time. You're way more of a Superman fan than I am.
I love Superman.
Adam's probably going to be a little more critical when it comes to this movie, whereas I'm just going to go into it as someone who likes comic book movies and likes comic books.
That's
so, Superman, which isn't called Superman, which is called The Man of Steel, directed by Zak Snyder of 300, Watchmen, Sucker Punch, Dawn of the Dead. So, pretty successful director, whether or not you like him a lot. He's kind of I feel like a controversial director a little bit. People either love it or hate his movies for the large part. So there was a lot of people who were a little nervous whenever it was announced that he was going to be directing this movie. And then we have David S. Goyer, who wrote the screenplay, and the story is by David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan,
right,
from the Batman franchise. So people were also a little worried that this movie was going to take the Batman spin and make a really dark version of Superman. And we'll talk a little bit about whether or not that's what happened. So, starring Henry Cavill and Amy Adams and a million other really successful, famous actors and actresses. I'm not going to name them all.
All of the people.
All the people are in this movie. Both Robin Hoods are in this movie as fathers.
That is true.
So, let's just get right into it. So, what did you think of this movie, Adam? Spoiler-free, by the way. For now, we're going to go spoiler-free, and then we'll put up a little warning and let you know that there's going to be spoilers once we're ready to talk about them.
So I have very conflicted feelings about the movie because I enjoyed a lot of it and really didn't like a lot of it. It was very fun when he was punching things, which I was happy about because Superman Returns was like the direct opposite of that. There was like no punching and no fun. So that part of the movie I liked quite a lot. It was in all of the things that make Superman Superman that I really had a hard time with Man of Steel. There wasn't a lot of, heart to the movie, I felt.
A lot of critics have described it as a hopeless movie. A movie that doesn't inspire hope, which is a lot of the reason why people want to watch not only a superhero movie, but especially a Superman movie.
Yeah, Superman is a character that I think is about hope and love and wonder and spectacle. And the movie had spectacle, but it was all like buildings falling down spectacle.
Right.
And not so much, I am Superman and I can lift the world. It was weird because the parts that were good were fantastic. But I overall was not really very happy with the film.
Right. So I had a strange viewing of this movie. While I was watching it, I felt like I was enjoying it a lot. And when I walked out of the movie, I was like, man, I really like that. That was a fun movie. But then the more that I thought on it and the more I kind of thought about other superhero movies and other Superman movies, the less I liked it.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. And I feel bad saying that I didn't enjoy it because I felt like it was everything. Every time I ever complained about a Superman movie, I was like, they need more punching, and Superman needs to fight other super people and fight giant robots. And that's all this movie is for the large part, is just from it starts off with fighting, and it doesn't necessarily start off with Superman fighting, but it starts off with fighting, and then there's just tons of fighting throughout the whole thing. There's 3 major giant, blockbuster summer movie, big fights towards the last act of the movie, and it's basically everything I ever said I wanted out of a Superman movie, but I was wrong about what I wanted out of a Superman movie, I think. So, in that sense, I liked it. The action was great. It was kind of felt a little Michael Bay at times. The explosions started to add up to the point where we're like, man, things are exploding and falling over just so that they're exploding and falling over.
Yeah.
And it kind of did get a little excessive, but it had what I think might have been one of my favorite fight scenes in a superhero movie ever, just because it was so spectacular and like flying around and punch each other. It was like the fight scene in Chronicle, but with like $10 million more of a budget, like people flying around and fighting in the air.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting. We haven't really seen a whole lot of that in superhero movies yet.
Interestingly, it reminded me a lot of the second and third Matrix movies, but maybe
Oh,
we'll talk
really?
about that more a little bit later.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't get that impression at all. I thought they were really well done, the fight scenes, stylistically, at least,
Yeah.
which is one of my... I really, really don't have a taste for Zak Snyder's directing style, especially when it comes to action scenes. I liked 300 the first time I saw it, and then when I revisited it, I thought it was kind of just like the same trick over and over again. And I really didn't like the style of the scenes, the fight scenes in Watchmen. I didn't watch Sucker Punch. I'm not going to say I did, but yeah, in this one I was totally surprised. A lot of the things that you think of as custom Zak Snyder style, the slowing down of the camera and like slowing down and spinning the camera around in that way, none of that is really in this movie at all. He kind of stepped back a little bit. I think it was definitely for the best. I like the style of this movie more than his other movies.
My only complaint would be, although he didn't do his slowing down, slow motion everything, why don't we see this in full detail, Zack Snyder stuff, a lot of the action sequences were either really zoomed up or really pulled out, and I felt like that's okay, but a lot of stuff that seemed like it would look really cool just kind of didn't. There were some awesome action sequences, I agree with you completely, but there was also a lot of really tight Superman's flying really fast, but you can't tell because we're right on his face.
Right, yeah, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
So where would you put it in comparison to the scope of other superhero movies, contemporary superhero movies?
That's a really tough... like, when I walked out of the theater, again, like, kind of like what you said, I would have placed it higher, but like, even the more I think about it, the more disappointing it becomes to me, and it's pretty low on the more recent superhero films.
Right. One of my other problems with it, well, let's just go ahead and say from this point forward, spoilers will be okay. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you're worried about spoilers, maybe you should stop watching now.
I would say that if you haven't seen it, it is worth seeing, because the parts that are good are actually quite good. I don't know if you should pay like $13, and I certainly wouldn't see it in 3D.
Right, we didn't see it in 3D, so I can't really say whether or not it'd be worth it. We didn't see it in 3D, so...
My understanding is that it's the fake 3D, but like post-process, it wasn't filmed on 3D cameras.
Right.
So I don't think it would be worth paying the extra money for 3D.
Right.
I would see it.
I would also recommend it. I don't think that it's going to like change your life. I don't think... It's nowhere near as good as The Avengers or any of last summer's big superhero movies. I liked Amazing Spider-Man a lot better than this movie, too. And those were the two big superhero movies that I think of from last summer. And I guess Batman, too. Yeah. I like Batman better than this movie, too, I think.
I did, too. I don't really like the Batman movies that much.
Yeah.
So that's...
But
I don't know. Maybe I did like it better than Batman, but that doesn't matter.
Right, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so... Say, check it out. If you want to hear spoilers, stick around and we're going to talk about the rest of the movie now. Spoilers, right here. I'll put something up.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe up there, maybe down here. Who knows?
Spoilers?
So, what I was going to say was that what I thought this movie was missing a little bit, and Derek, who's behind the camera, actually got me thinking about it when you pointed out, was that Lois Lane is amazing in this movie. I feel bad we didn't even talk about her in the non-spoiler section. She was like one of my favorite parts of the movie. But Lois Lane, the character, is amazing in this movie, and she's very Lois Lane-y, like kick-ass, and she's this awesome journalist, and she goes where she wants to go, and she doesn't care about the rules. But the romance is just like not there. So we're supposed to think it's there. Yeah, it's like they just have this connection, and so it's going to be okay when they make out, and we're supposed to be emotionally like invested in it. But we don't see them fall in love in any kind of way, especially compared to every other Superman story we've ever read or seen. They develop a relationship. They just see each other and they have an instantaneous connection, and we're supposed to feel something for it.
Yeah, like in the original Donner Superman films, you see an actual friendship develop between Superman and Lois Lane, and they're flirty and they go on dates and they do all this cute stuff before they're just in love. Whereas in this movie, it's like, oh, I saved your life, so let's make out.
Right, and part of that is a result of this goal to have a Clark Kent-less Superman movie,
which is strongly disagree.
Was a weird choice. It's funny, we've talked a lot on the show already about how origin stories when it comes to superhero movies can be a bit of a crutch because they're so accessible to new audiences. But this movie takes it one step further. The whole movie basically takes place before any Superman story that we're used to or want to be told. He's not Clark Kent. He doesn't take on the real identity of Clark Kent until the last second of the movie, which is a really strange choice whenever he's kind of like charming and fun and what makes Superman so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Amy Adams I thought was great, but I didn't feel any chemistry between the two actors, and also the story didn't really leave any room for any to develop.
I mean, they had some cute interactions. It's not totally without any kind of
right. There's
spark,
the interrogation scene is a fun scene.
Yeah.
But right outside of that, there just wasn't enough for me. So one other thing that we should definitely talk about is just the last part of the movie. So the big fight, and then the way that Superman handles the problem.
Yeah.
So what was your opinion of all of that?
It was a train wreck. It didn't make any sense. Like, the more I think about it, it just is illogical. Like, the whole third act. And that's okay, because it's big and exciting. But then there's all these buildings falling, and Superman doesn't seem to care, and just people are fleeing, and the only person, the literal only person he saves in the whole third scene is Lois Lane. Like,
right.
What? Like, seriously. Tens of thousands of people had to have died in the attack on Metropolis.
Right. It's strange because a lot of what the movie got right in the first two acts, I feel like it walked away from a little bit in the third act. So in the first two acts, they really convinced me that Clark Kent or Kal was just wanted to help people. No matter where he went, traveling around the world, trying to stay quiet and just find out secrets, he just kept finding himself in these situations where he had to help someone.
Yeah.
And I really believed that he was just a good person and he wanted to do those things. And then he kind of becomes Superman after he learns his secrets, and he does take on this awesome Superman perspective of like totally tranquil, and he's so peaceful.
Yeah.
And that was all perfect. But then whenever later opportunities come up for him to be saving people's lives, he just doesn't seem to care at all. And so I thought a lot about Zod dying at the end of the movie, so we're in spoiler territory. So,
obviously.
So Superman breaks Zod's neck, which I can just hear all the stupid conversations in comic book stores around the world that people are crying about it. And like, I'm not that kind of guy to usually care. Like, if Batman... Do you think you are?
I freaking hate it that he killed Zod,
so,
but whatever. We talk about that in a second.
Right, but I just mean in general, when things like that happen, if it works for the movie, I usually don't care.
Right.
Like, if Batman is going to get a gun and shoot someone in the movie, if it works in the movie, I'm kind of okay with it.
Right.
No matter how much it's something that wouldn't really happen in a comic. But, so part of what doesn't work for it is that he has to break Zod's neck because Zod is about to use heat vision on these three people, these kids, and it's going to kill them. But there's no emotional investment for that because we just saw Superman fly through buildings and probably accidentally kill like hundreds of thousands of people without stopping to save one person along the way. If they would have been fighting and like the reason Superman couldn't win the fight is because he has to keep stopping to save people, like he just can't save people and fight Zod at the same time, that would have made sense. That like this whole fight where he just can't save everyone because Zod's here is building up to the fact that he's going to have to kill Zod. But they didn't set any of that up. They just fly around not caring and just knocking over building after building. And then all of a sudden, this one person is going to get killed. And he's like, oh, I have to decide to kill someone. Yeah. Which just seemed way out of left field.
That's the problem. I actually don't have a problem with Superman killing someone. At some point in time, it seems like it's necessary. And I do actually think at some point in time he might have killed Zod in the comics. But that's not really relevant. It's not so much about it has to adhere to the character in the comics for me.
Right.
The situation seemed really contrived. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really remember how Superman got the upper hand there. He just all of a sudden had it.
Yeah.
And then Zod all of a sudden knew...
Well, he puts him in a triangle choke.
Oh,
and if you watch MMA, you know you're not getting out of a triangle choke.
So Superman's choices here are murder Zod or give up on his chokehold to save the people.
Right.
And rather than give up on the chokehold to save people, he kills Zod. Like, this is a moment of decision for him. And he never contemplates another choice. He just kills him. This doesn't seem like Superman to me. It doesn't even seem like the Superman we've seen in this film so far. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're right. Superman hasn't exactly been going out of the way to save people. But he did in the beginning of the movie. Certainly. And I just don't... I don't know. I don't think that situation was a very well-established one.
I think that there's some comparisons to a lot of other superhero movies that had very similar scenes to this where there's like two... like the choice, both bad options. And a lot of times in a superhero movie, there's the hero finds a third option to the point that it's like almost a trope at this point. I think that it was Spider-Man 1, maybe, where like Spider-Man has a choice between saving Mary Jane or the kids in the trolley or whatever it was, and he finds a way to do both, And you would think that of all the people in the world that could find a way to have a third option, it would be Superman, He could have taken the fight. One thing, so the same thing in Smallville. He goes through this big fight on Main Street, and all these buildings get knocked over, and like, it would have just been such a Superman touch to have him take the fight to a cornfield because he cares so much about people. That's why he's doing all this, is because he doesn't want to hurt humanity. So why is he fighting on Main Street? And then whenever he's fighting Zod, why are they fighting in the Grand Central Station of Metropolis instead of just picking him up and flying up and fighting in like up in the atmosphere? You know,
Right.
Like they can fight in space. We know it. So why wouldn't he just do that?
Yeah, I mean, for that matter, when he has the opportunity, he like punches people into big oil tankers and makes giant explosions that certainly killed other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After the big fight, you know, Superman comes down, he kisses Lois, and then he walks over to start talking to Zod, who's like just sitting there defeated, when there's like probably hundreds of people buried under rubble everywhere. Like, it seems like Superman would delay going to like rub it in the bad guy's face and just go start lifting buildings off of people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I think that I liked the movie, and it was fun, and it was a really good summer movie, and that it was big and grand, and the fight scenes were cool, but something about the heart of it just wasn't there for me. I don't think it's going to be a movie that I want to revisit a lot, like I do a lot of other superhero movies. It didn't let me down in the ways that I thought it was going to let me down. It didn't look like a Zak Snyder movie, and it didn't feel like... It was a little dark, but it wasn't Batman. You know, they didn't make the movie into Batman.
Don't you think that the whole point of him killing Zod was the whole conversation that you always have when you talk about Batman, where why doesn't Batman kill the Joker? You know, and so like they just decided to have that conversation in a Superman movie too.
Right.
That's a conversation that never should come up with Superman. Superman's not that guy.
That's
He's
true.
Just not.
My problem with that fight is, I mean, it's more like a logistics thing, but like, so he's trying to save these people, and he has them in a chokehold, but he can't stop them from like slowly looking at the people.
Right.
But he has enough strength to then snap his neck. I don't know how you get this extra.
Also, I was wondering how he snaps his neck without the laser beams just chopping those people's heads off.
Yeah. I mean, there's some suspension of disbelief for sure, and I'm all right with that. But
yeah, and the. Especially going through the city itself and like you guys said, causing so much destruction or not caring about the destruction. I could see how it would be nice if they came at it a different way where he gets the whole reason is he's just pounding on Zod and going through buildings in the beginning is because, I mean, they threatened to hurt his mom. Yeah. So, you know, he just really goes off on Zod, and it's nice to see that, you know, it's nice to see that he really... shows a lot of love for, I mean, his mom and humans in general. But then you never see the transformation of, like, you know, he's becoming more powerful, you know, through these fights, figuring out, like, how much power he has, and then eventually going to I'm Superman. You know, I have enough power where I'm going to save people and fight big giant monsters. Right. You never see that. You just see him just go in, like, pound mode and just, like, go headstrong right at enemies rather than worrying about people.
I think maybe there's an argument to be made for the fact that this movie sets up a sequel in which he is the Superman that we're a little more familiar with. I mean, it's weird that he has just killed someone, you know, and now it's probably going to change him a lot, but, you know, so he understands who he is, he understands his powers, and he understands what it feels like to take someone's life, which it seems like he hated. So, I mean, that does make him a little more Batman-esque than the Superman that we really know. But if they do another movie, which I have to assume they will. This movie, by the way, didn't do great critically. It made a lot of money. I think right now it's sitting around like a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't awful, but it's definitely not good.
No. Especially compared to something like Avengers or Thor. Right. Both of which did incredibly well with the critics and audiences.
Right. And even the Batman movies, to compare other DC movies. But yeah, so Man of Steel, we recommend seeing it, but we don't think you're going to like it. I really can't think of a kind of audience member that's going to walk away from this movie loving it. Maybe someone who
somebody that's oblivious to like what Superman really stands for and just wants like a big action movie.
Yeah, someone who wants a Michael Bay film.
Yeah, but even Michael Bay films are kind of fun. Like, there isn't a whole lot of fun in this movie.
No.
It's a little, like, because it has a serious tone to it the whole time, you know?
Yeah.
But the serious tone doesn't pay off in a hopeful kind of way, you know?
So watch Smallville instead.
So watch Smallville instead, which is what I was thinking most of the movie.
Yeah.
And now all our arguments are just, like, null, because no one believes that Smallville is a good show. All right, so that's it for Man of Steel, I think. See it, but you're probably not going to like it. That's our verdict.
Congratulations.
All right, we'll see you next time.